All right, Sarah, Jen, we're recording. Dane, Jimmy, thanks for being here. We'll make sure this goes out to all the teachers that weren't able to attend. But how many days left are in the countdown, Sarah and Jen? 3. Okay, all right, 3 more. I'm happy for y'all that we're that close, and we'll keep today. Is it better if we keep today to roughly an hour like we did last time, based on both of your schedules and cadences?
Yeah, that'll work.
That'll be good.
Okay, sounds like a plan. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Okie doke. So today we're covering computing and careers in our 2021 spring CSPD. So this is the 3rd out of the 4 PD sessions. A little bit of a agenda review. So after catching up, we're going to talk about a AI case study that actually pertains to Chick-fil-A, which is pretty interesting. So that'll just be a good example to run through digital literacy as it's applied in the workplace today with some of the people that I've got in my friend group. Then we're going to work through some project help, see if anyone has any questions or concerns about the projects in Live Oak. After that, we'll actually do a little bit more of a Live Oak portal tour to help familiarize you both with the actual system that's going to be used this fall from the teacher's perspective. Right now, you all have the student perspective, which is pretty similar. You're just missing some functionality that the teachers need. But Jimmy's going to show you all more of the teacher-based features so that you don't start using the portal this fall without any prior experience with how to set up a project, how to set up a course, how to manage your students, etc. And finally, we'll end on the Q&A. So, and I do have one other slide with some book reviews. I read a whole bunch of books. Actually, I listen to them. I don't have time to sit down and read, but when I'm mowing the lawn and doing other rote tasks, I listen to a whole bunch of books that are specifically talking about digital literacy, computer science, the modern day career workforce, and just the coalescence of those topics. As CS teachers, I think y'all would really enjoy some of these books, so I wanted to just share those with y'all, and we'll do that towards the end. So we'll move on to the next slide. We'll dig more into detail here in a moment when Dane takes over, but I wanted to just start right at the beginning. Are there any issues with portal access, with the projects, with assignments? Are there any problems or fires that we need to put out before we get going with the rest of the presentation?
No, and if I'm being completely honest, I haven't looked at it since last week because I feel like I'm drowning a tad. So I just need to get grades posted and then I'm going to be able to play. That's what I consider like doing the Pong and stuff like that. So I did the first little bit to make sure I knew where everything was, and I took a quiz real quick. So anywho, that's why I missed 2 because I was just clicking. Don't yell at me.
No worries at all, Sarah. Really and truly, we've got the whole summer and y'all are going to have access the entire summer. You can log in at your leisure, take a look at the projects. Like we said in the last meeting, we're not looking for anyone to even have these things completed during PD. We just want to make sure that everyone's had the opportunity on the calls to be able to talk through anything that they might have done. And we're going to be available all summer. So the PD doesn't just stop after our 4th session. We won't schedule formal PD, but our team is going to be emailing just to check in, see how things are going, see if you need any help, and we can schedule one-off meetings as needed. So there is no pressure. No one's supposed to have gotten anything done because we do understand that you all are swamped here at the end of the semester. All right, we'll move right along. Okie doke. I'm going to hand things over to Dane just to be able to show off some of the aspects of the curriculum, answer any questions you all might have. And if we're light on questions in the curriculum today, we'll skew towards just doing more of a tour through how we set up curriculum, how we think about the curriculum delivery experience, so you all can get an idea of how Dane goes about forming the material for students. Dane, all yours to take away.
Okay, great. So the first question that I just wanted to ask both you, Sarah and Jennifer, is when it comes to the projects that you've looked at or seen, even if you've just taken a look at them the last time, even if the last one was last week, um, which project do you think is going to be the one that you try to see from start to finish and complete, and why? I know we've got three there. We have the Hello World project that's covering fundamentals. We have the paddleball gaming project that it's like Pong, but it's more it's I'd say mid-tier on the advanced spectrum, and then we have the very advanced Pong style 2D game project. So I'm curious which one of those which of those projects each of you individually feel more drawn to.
Well, I'm gonna do the Hello World, but that
Mhm.
stuff comes easy to me. But I don't know why. It's just very simplistic to me. So I feel like I'm gonna kind of just breeze through that one, which is why I said please give me the others.
Definitely.
And then so then I'm gonna start looking at the Pong. But I would like to do the third one as well. So I plan on doing all of them, but I think the first one's gonna be pretty quick life because I wasn't even looking at y'all's video. I kind of skimmed through it and then I just started typing because I knew what to write. But I did listen to it. I went back and listened to it just so I could make sure to see how you all were presenting the content because my students would know that, which is what made me prompt to ask Batavia when would we be using that? Because I was thinking more IDT, the intro course. And that's what she said, yes. So that's just me though. Jennifer might be doing something different.
Okay,
So
cool.
I already went through Hello World. I think I finished most of it. Well, I haven't done the assignments, but I listened to all the videos and read all the stuff. I started there because for me, JavaScript is not my knee-jerk language. So I'm kind of having to relearn it because I haven't done it since college.
Mhm.
So for me, it's about seeing how you describe it, how you are going to present it to someone who's never seen it before, and then building on that. Because, you know, if we're showing them the videos, which I think that's kind of a great idea, then it kind of, I already know the lingo that you're using. And so for me, it was kind of like starting over and making sure I understood from the start.
That's great to hear, Jennifer. And everything you just said lines up with my intention and my methodology for creating this Hello World project. The point of that project is to go over fundamentals of HTML, CSS, but also introduce that scripting language, JavaScript, because I know from experience that that's a language that can be somewhat trickier. And even if you have studied it before, like you did in college, it's good to be able to brush up on all of that, particularly when we have these more advanced projects that have JavaScript so heavily used. And so yeah, the Hello World project really is it's intended to be that entry point for teachers and students alike, for them to be able to understand, hey, this is how HTML works, and these are the basic building blocks. This is how CSS works. These are the basic building blocks, and likewise for JavaScript. And so I'm happy that it sounds like that was a good refresher for you, and also filled in some knowledge that may have been forgotten since college. And I do the same thing with other programming languages. Just trying to uh, brush up on what I can before I dive into advanced projects. Was there any, as you're going through it, Jennifer, since as you said, you've been through basically all the material at this point and built everything out. Did you feel like particularly with JavaScript, did you feel like there were areas where it was something, maybe all of it was refresher, but were there any parts of that were new to you and that you were like, hey, I'm really happy that I learned this particular concept? Were there any standout concepts that you thought were really beneficial?
Well, so for me, one of the things that I remember right now is when you started doing it in one place and then you're like, well, really, you could do it over here. And over here's where we're going to do it from now on. And just showing them that really it could be done both ways. And
Mm-hmm.
the sort of the way you said it and like just showing them, it kind of helped, because one of the things that I noticed this semester with my students is we all program program differently because we're all wired differently. And so while I think the program should be written this way, my students would come up with these ways of doing it, and it did exactly what was asked of them, but like I never would have thought of programming it that way. So seeing them go back and forth helped me really cement the idea, and it gave me a different perspective. So I liked that, and it helped me sort of build on that. So it made the rest of it not as like, wait, what is he doing? Why is he doing it there kind of way?
That's great. That's really good to hear. I mean, I can think of a few different examples within the curriculum of the of what you just described. You know, on the one hand, you can write CSS code and JavaScript code right there in your HTML file in between style tags and script tags, respectively. But it's and there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. But for websites and applications that are bigger, you're going to want to separate out that code. And I try to explain the why behind whatever I do inside of these videos because I know how beneficial it is for me whenever I've been going through a YouTube tutorial series that's been building some web application from the ground up, when the virtual instructor is letting me know why they're doing something, because there are so many ways to code a project. There's so many ways to set up a project like you were just alluding to. And it's good to know the why behind things because you might watch another video and think, okay, was I doing it wrong before because they're doing it totally different? And the answer is no, you know, more often than not. As long as the result is, you know, being achieved, you didn't necessarily do it wrong, but there are some different conventions that can be helpful for some people, and then other conventions are helpful for others. And you know, when you get into the actual industry, the private sector of programming in the software industry, there are more established conventions, but it's good to know all the different ways of doing something and taking on a task. So I'm happy to hear that, and I'll be sure to continue weaving that portion of the narrative into the curriculum. So thanks for that feedback. And then I was curious, you know, with regards to quizzes, Sarah, you took the HTML quiz 1. How did you feel, A, the length was of that quiz, 10 questions? How did you feel like the answer sets were, the potential answer sets? And just how did you feel about the quiz taking experience here in the Live Vote portal?
So I thought the quiz thing was easy, except I'm trying to think what I was aggravated about. There was something, was like when you have to hit save every time you choose an answer, I think. Tell me if that's right. So, and then it was like when I was at the end, it said I had 2 unanswers because I skipped 2, one of which I was like, is this a trick question? And it was one about a nested tag, but I think I know I put the wrong answer because I was like, I call it a tag, but I know it's an element, but now, so I went back and watched the video and y'all said one word and I was like, okay, so I was right, it's this, but it was the other one. I should have gone with my gut the first time, but whatever. But it was something funky that was about choosing the answer. I don't know, it was like, it didn't recognize that I still was in there and it was saying, are you not answering this question? I was like, I'm about to get there. So I was yelling at the computer, but not in a bad way. But I mean, it was easy to do. It was easy to take, to navigate through. It was no
Good.
problems. So, I mean, that part was fine.
That's great. It's good getting that feedback. I think it's also good hearing your take on the way, because I know exactly what question you're referring to. I believe it's the question that says, you know, when an HTML element is, you know, written in between another element, you know, the tags are another element, what is it referred to as? What is it called? And that it's good hearing that because it'll make me continue trying to do better in future videos for curriculum to make a bigger point of saying, hey, this is what this is officially. And you'll hear people refer to it these different ways, but from an official technical definition, this is what it's called, because you will hear people say, you know, nested tag, and you'll hear them say nested element. But then there's that industry recognized definition that we quiz on and test on. And so I need to make sure that I make that distinction in the videos, you know, from here on out, and also make that reflected in the textual content below the section. So thanks for that feedback.
But I do the same thing, because when I'm trying to get them, if you just tell them the less than and greater than symbols, they don't know what it is. And you're like, it's a wicket. But then I'm like, okay, it's like Mr. and Mrs. Pac-Man coming together. So I call them chompers and they get that. But then I'm like, okay, you might hear me call it chompers, but it's really called it this. So I have to watch that and backtrack. I think it's just part of teaching, try to reach their level, but you want them to know the correct terminology at the same time. So it's hard, but
Definitely.
yeah, but you got me. I mean, it was fair and square. There was no tricky part to it. I was just like, yeah, when I got my answer key, I was like, dang it, I knew it.
Well, listen, when I was looking at the quiz, you did great on it. And so I
It's an
totally
80.
understand. Yeah, hey, listen, I totally understand. There was that one and there was one other one. So one other little question, but I love what you just said though about, when you're teaching, you need to be able to get down, even if there's a concept that's
Yes,
way up here that you're trying to teach, you need to get down to your students' level and then use analogies
yes.
often, to get them up to that concept. And I love using that methodology myself. I'm happy, to hear you've got plenty of experience, obviously teaching, and it's good to hear that that's something you use as well. I'm going to continue utilizing that in the video-led content.
I'll do better on my next quiz, I promise. It'll be 100.
You did great. I'm so thrilled to know that y'all are working through this, and I love hearing your feedback. I love hearing your successes with it too. So when it comes to, I want to talk real quick just about the differences actually between this paddleball game and Pong style 2D game, because so we can open up that paddleball game first. The reason I want to is because they'll look very similar. We use the same graphics because they are both Pong-like games, but we differentiate the names, we differentiate what they're doing, because in the paddleball game, you're working within one file, the game.js file, and you are going to be more concerned with shapes moving in 2D space and how they interact together, and then overlaying images on top of those shapes. And that's what you're doing. And so that can seem, probably very familiar to things you've done in the past. And so that's what we do here in Paddleball. So you create each game component. You're creating the paddles, you're creating the ball, you're creating the scoreboards, the countdown, and the mod objects. So you create each component, but it's all done within a single file, game.js. The difference in the 2D Pong style gaming project, so the one that actually has Pong in the name, is that we dive much deeper. First off, in that particular project, the videos are much longer because it's much more in depth. And what I mean by that is we talk about not only 2D space and game components, but we talk about how they're created utilizing these different classes. So JavaScript classes that are that have been they serve as a foundation for the game engine, the Live Oak game engine that's used to create all of this. So basically, there are just a lot more concepts that are gone over in that 2D Pong style game. So we go over class hierarchies, we go over vectors, so position vector, velocity vector, acceleration vector, and we go over learning how to read different enumerated classes like APIs. So we learn how to figure out which method we need from a particular class, which property we need from a particular class. We look at that source code, and then we write with it inside of the game.js file, which is our main view for our game. So basically that Pong 2D style game is just a much more in-depth dive. And you're looking not only at what you're seeing visually and what you're creating from a visual standpoint, but you're looking at the bones of how all of this animation is created from the ground up. And that, I think, is what's really exciting. So with Paddleball, you're going to be learning how collisions happen in 2D space, and how to create components, how to create animations by using recursion. And then you're learning all of that also in the Pong 2D style game, but you're also learning the stuff that's happening behind the scenes, the linear algebra involved, the calculus even involved. But let me preface by saying it's not linear algebra or calculus that a high schooler couldn't understand. This isn't a collegiate level take on calculus or linear algebra. It's just some basic building blocks. It's explained in a way that is all in terms of XY coordinate systems, which are concepts that high schoolers will be able to talk and understand all of this in terms of, and for yourselves as well. So don't let that scare you off. It's advanced, but it's still written in a way that anybody can sit down. I've had even middle schoolers who sat down and been able to understand it as long as they put in the time with the videos. And had, of course, a guide, which was me in the classroom when I was working with them, showing them how everything worked. But that was, I wanted to talk about the differences. And the reason I think it's good to have both these versions of what ultimately is the same outcome and product as far as a game goes is that some people want different things out of these projects. Some people want to learn more of the math that's behind them. And so that's the more advanced Pong 2D style gaming project. And then some people are like, I would like to learn how to quickly build games using a framework or using a gaming engine or library it's provided for me. And that's what Paddleball is. But both are excellent for learning more about gaming and game creation. It's just one's a lot more mathy, and the other, and all that math is explained step by step, and the other one is more component driven. And in chapter 1, like what you see right here, you'll see chapter 1 is it's always going to be the same across projects, which is just ensuring that you have your text editor downloaded and you have the Google Chrome web browser downloaded, because that's the browser I use, and that way y'all are seeing the same view as your virtual instructor within your browser. And so here in this Paddleball game, when you go to chapter 2, again, this is the mid-level difficulty project, and so this is where you're creating all your components. So Paddle 1 and all the terms associated with this material, and then you go on to section 2 and you have creating Paddle 2, and then the third and final section within chapter 2's material here is creating the ball. So by the end of this chapter, you have 2 working paddle components and you have a working ball component. And the other thing I'd like to point out is that you can see right here in this section, we have a task to download the paddle game phase3.zip file found in assignment phase 3. So the way that I have so Hello World, you download files once and then you're building in those files because it's a simple enough program that it allots for that. Here in the Paddleball game project and in the Pong project, you actually will download zip files on a section by section basis. The reason for that being is basically there's enough that you code in each section that you'll download a phase and you'll be given a little bit of skeleton code, and then you code it up. And then you submit that. And then when you get to the next section, even if you had issues in the previous section, but the rest of the class and you were moving along to the next section, you may have had some issues, things weren't quite working properly. Well, in the next section, when you download the phase 2 files, all the code that was necessary to complete phase 1 will be included within that skeleton code, and then you can just start. You can pick right up where you left off. So maybe you didn't understand and quite get things in the beginning, but we don't want that to keep you from continuing to build out the game. So you download the projects on a section by section, phase by phase basis, and you go through each phase of this gaming project, linearly. And so that way, even if there was code, you're like, I don't get how that worked, or my code didn't work for me, the code will be provided for you in the next phase. And we'll make sure that we've opened up all of these phases for y'all as you're going through it. But yeah, I mean, so by the end of the other thing that I think is really interesting is that by the end of both these projects, the Paddleball game and the Pong project, for the very last section in each one, you actually overlay images on top of these simple 2D shapes. So right here in chapter 4, you can see the very last section is called overlaying images. This is really great because in games, everything is approximated. I mean, you may have what looks like a very complicated image, and it would take too much computing power, or it'd take a heck of a lot to slow your computer down to try to account for collisions between really complex shapes and another complex shape. So often what's happening is that you have these very simple shapes, like a rectangle or a circle, and they're called bounding boxes or just bounding shapes. And they've created boundaries that are roughly what a more complex image should be. So you see right here, we have you can see the backsplash for this video, we have like an acorn and some logs. Well, that acorn is a little bit more complex as far as a shape goes than just a circle. But the reality is it's just an image of a complex acorn shape that's been overlaid on a very simple circle shape. But we're only ever trying to account for the simple circle shapes. And Sarah, you got a question, so I would love to hear it.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
No, you're fine.
So when you're talking about like if we are just confused as we're turning it in, it's not going to prohibit us from moving on. So I've had stuff like that with students. Is it I'm assuming they're going to have the same type of scenario? Is there a way to like not push out the next like section until they at least submit the one and let me give them feedback?
So great question. So here's how it works. The phases that are offered, they're inside of assignments. So like a student would go, so the way we have it set up here is there's a phase that's downloadable per assignment. So phase 1 belongs to a phase 1 assignment where the only item in there is to download that zip file. And so what it allows for, Sarah, is you as a teacher, when you are working with your students in the fall, you have the ability to open up all those assignments a la carte, the ones that you want to open up, the ones you don't. So you would be able to say, okay, I'm going to open up, phase 1 for today, and this is what we're all going through together as a class, and let's all submit. And then so everyone's working, and if you have students, maybe you have one student who's like, I was having issues with this, I had a bug, and then I wasn't able to quite finish everything, so I submitted what I had. The next day you might say, hey, we're going through the next section. So then you would open up your assignment for phase 2, and then students can pick back up where they left off. But it's not like a thing where all the phases will be opened up, so that way students could just race ahead and download the correct code and then they're just sitting on it. You have the power to open up those assignments. So you can stagger them out through the week, which ones are open for students and which ones you still want to be submitted.
Okay, thank you.
And Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong on any of that, but I think all of that is correct as far as that assignment opening, publishing process goes.
Yeah, that's exactly why we allow teachers to publish assignments so that they can restrict how quickly their classes move through. Especially since some of the assignments have boilerplate that may be covered in as the answer to previous assignments, so we don't want to give that away.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm actually going at this point. I've presented everything I wanted to present, which is really because we opened up those 3 projects, and Hello World I know is straightforward for y'all. But again, I was happy that Jennifer was able to, provide some feedback that it does at the very least serve as a refresher for some of these concepts, and that's good to know, and that's why it's there. But I wanted to talk about the differences between these two projects that we have open for you, Paddleball and Pong, because they can look similar as far as the visuals, and the visuals are similar. But I just wanted y'all to be aware those were the differences. For Paddleball, you're focused solely on creating components and animating them in 2D space, period. With Pong style 2D game, you are focused not only on 2D space animation and components, but also on some vector addition, different types of vectors, and then a little bit of how class hierarchies work in JavaScript, and then using a game engine and treating it like an API where you're referencing methods and properties to create ball components and paddle components, and just basically going over inheritance as it pertains to class hierarchies. So just a lot of cool JavaScript concepts that we go through step by step, and those are the differences between those 2 projects. So I'm really looking forward to getting more feedback as y'all are able to explore them more. And so at this point, just does anybody else have any other questions about any of the material that I've covered here and any of the concepts that I brought up? And if not, then I'll hand things back to Kimball for a moment so he can let y'all know what the next step is here in our PD session.
Perfect. Thanks, Dane. Well, I know that we've got Dr. Walton and Maxine both in the meeting now. Dr. Walton, it's good to see you here. Maxine, glad you could make it. I'm so sorry to hear about that tragedy, Maxine. The friends and family are absolutely in our prayers, and I just I absolutely hate that that's happening for your school family here at the end of the semester. So what we're going to do now that Dane's presented more of the curriculum aspect is we're going to hand things over to Jimmy so he can field questions on the portal itself. The information that we're presenting to students and the information presented to teachers, that's critical. It's really important. However, the system is also its own domain to learn. The content is one item, but then there's the system to present the data and to control the classroom virtually, and then the student management. And we want to make sure that each teacher, each one of you all is confident in using the system to manage your classrooms effectively, to manage assignments, student access, and all the other features that are available, especially if there's going to continue to be blended learning in classroom and virtual. It's important one way or the other, but it's even more useful if you've got students that are learning remotely. So we are going to hand things over to Jimmy, and he's going to do a bit of a short portal feature tour. So I will stop sharing and hand things over to him.
All right. Thank you, Kimball. So before we start the feature tour, I'm just going to open it up for quick questions. You've had a chance to view the system as a student so far, with the exception of the fact that the students don't have that nice little chat bubble at the lower right-hand corner of the screen, which we haven't heard from some of you guys, by the way. So if you get stuck, let us know. But that would really be the only difference between what you're seeing and what they would see. So before we do a quick feature tour, any questions on what you've seen, any concerns or feedback? Okay, if not,
Not for
then
me.
we'll get right into it. Sorry, what?
Nope, I was just saying, not me.
Okay. Let me do a screen share here. Okay, can you see my browser? Great. So what we're going to do is I have set up a sample Google Classroom class here. So this is going to be my sample student within the Google Classroom. And this account here is going to be my sample teacher. So you look in the people here, we've got the teacher and the student all set up. And we're going to go ahead and just do a quick project creation. We're going to publish 2 assignments, look at how grading them differs, and then look at the feedback that the student gets and that the teacher gets. And then we'll do a little bit of a dive into some of the reporting that we have. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to move the Zoom menu so I can actually click things on the screen, and we'll get right into it. So first thing we'll do is just jump in and create a new multi-page website project. We'll leave today as the start date, and we'll leave the end date open. I like to use AutoGrader where I can. It works to just grade questions based on the proportion of questions that you've gotten right. So it's a straight percentage. So I'm going to turn that on. And from here, we will finish. And so you can set up Google right from that screen if you want, but I did want to show you that you can also set it up if you forget to within the project as well. So we're just going to rename this. So we'll name it to County PD Demo. Okay, I have all caps on. And then we'll go over to the People tab here. And if I go ahead and add an integration, I can go ahead to Google. And now remember, I had PD sample class here. So I'm going to find that and I'll save it. So now it'll publish a button. So it's just, okay, so yeah, it's just published that button. So if I go and look in my sample class here, I'm going to refresh that. And I'm going to see a new button here that'll allow me to log in directly to Live Oak. So I'm going to log out of Live Oak for a second. And I'm going to go over to my student account here and refresh that so I see that button. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that just so you see what your students are going to see if you're integrated with Google Classroom and they're logging in for the first time. So I click here. And I'm going to choose the account that I want to log in as. So this is my student account. And once they do that, they're going to land right on the project homepage. All right, so Henry County PD demo. I'm here in my content screen, and then they could start, looking around their activity, people, assignments, what have you. All right, so I'm going to log back out of the student and jump back in as a teacher. Okay. So we talked about publishing assignments. So I'm going to go ahead and publish 2 of them. I publish a multiple choice quiz, and then this, let's see, I'll do a submit chapter 3 project code here. So these are 2 different types of projects. One can easily be auto-graded and the other is more open-ended. So we'll publish these. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the user to my user over to the student user. So I'm going to switch that over here. So now I'm emulating my student user. If I go over here to activity, so I see a few things have happened. I see 2 new assignments have posted, and I would direct your students toward the activity tab because that's the easiest way to see what new assignments are posted, when they get feedback on grades, and it's also an easy way for you as teachers to handle that feedback as well. So I'll show that in a second. There are other ways to go about doing it, but this just kind of guides you right along where you need to go. So there's no reason not to use it. So we'll start with the quiz. And I'm going to go through this quickly and just guess the first one of each question. So yeah, okay, I'm not even going to think about it. I'm just going to go. And no, okay, I can't get everyone wrong, so we'll get a few right here. Table, so we'll at least get 2 right. And now we'll just skip through the rest of these. And Sarah, I think you mentioned that you didn't want to click save. So I guess what you were doing is you were clicking these and then you were just moving on up here. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good to know. I wrote a ticket into auto save when you click on these things, but I just want to
And I'm
make
not
sure I
saying that's a
understood.
bad thing, but I'm gonna have that kid that's gonna not click on that save and continue. Just, I don't know. Sometimes too many buttons can be, I don't know. I mean, I understand it, but
Yeah,
I was just, providing from my point of view.
and that's exactly what I want. Because that, we design systems from our point of view, and it helps us grow as engineers and product managers to hear from people who are using the system. So that's perfect. Okay, so save and continue. Looks like we hit all the questions. Great. So we're going to finish. Okay, so this has been submitted, and now we'll do this one. So this is open-ended. Now, if I were a good student, I would upload something, but I'm not going to. I'll just save that and I'll finish it. All right, so at this point, I'm going to stop emulating. And I'm going to go back over to the activity tab here. Okay, so a few things have happened. The chapter 3 quiz assignment was submitted, and I can click that. Well, actually, I'll click it here. So I can click this to actually go to the gradebook view of that student and that particular quiz. And so if this weren't already graded, then I could click into each one of these and grade them manually. But since I'm using an auto grader, it's already been submitted and closed for me. This is also a place where, say I have a student that doesn't do so great on this quiz and I want them to retake it, I can reopen it here as well. If I go back a level, so remember I said that you can go and there's different ways to go into the gradebook. So I can see, I can go into the gradebook from this broader level here, and I can see any one of these assignments that I have access to. But it's easier to go in from the activity stream because I'm put exactly where I need to go. There's no clicking around. It just drops me exactly where I need to go. So that's my preference. You may have a different one. I wanted to make sure you had both of those options explained. Okay, so we looked at the quiz that was already graded. Now let's look at something that hasn't already been graded. So this is the chapter 3 project code here. So for something that hasn't been graded yet, we can click into here and we can actually see the question. We can see the solution. So this is the solution that most likely Dane put together. So we can download that. And if the student may have submitted something, we would see the student solution alongside of that. Bearing in mind that we are moving away from zip file downloading and uploading for submissions come the fall, that's a feature that is under active development. But at this point, this is the way that we would do it. Okay, so if I can go ahead and assign points here and add some comments about why I'm doing that, and then when I'm done, so if I'm not auto grading, and then once I'm done with this student and everyone else, then I can hit complete, and that will close the assignment and then grade everyone who hasn't already received a grade. Okay, let's jump back to the project here. So at this point, we've gone through, we've created a project, we've integrated it with Google. Oh, there is one more thing I wanted to show you. So let's see. So this is the student account. Let's go here. So as a student, if I maybe haven't gone into Live Oak, but I remember that I submitted something and I want to see how I did, I can go and click into, we also push the grades to Google Classroom as well. So I can click here and I can see, well, yeah, I didn't do so great. That's what happens when you guess, I guess, but we can see our grades there as well. Okay, so we've created a project, we've published assignments, we've completed them, and seen the integration with Google Classroom for both signing in and pushing grades. The other thing I wanted to show you is I know that as teachers, there is a constant need to basically ascertain, okay, you've taught what you were supposed to teach. And so we know that the standards are tightly aligned with this. So if you click into, and this is true of any content tab here, sometimes you'll even see it for chapters and sections. But if I click here, so this is the project as a whole, and I see that I'm satisfying IT IDT 7.5, and this is what it is. And we can see that this is in a number of tracks here. So it rolls up under cybersecurity and computer science and game design. So we can see how this fits into the broader Georgia Department of Education standards narrative. The other nice thing about the standards is it allows us to drill down into how students are doing. I want to take a look at that. If we go to the standards tab here, so this is everything I have access to. So as a teacher, you'd see, this is where you'd see multiple projects kind of aggregated together, as well as multiple students. But let's just say we want to target a particular project. So what did we call that project? Henry County PD demo. So we'll go back here. And okay, so now we've got the PD demo. And if I had more than one student, you could also target a particular student in here. Maybe you have someone who's falling behind or someone who's pulling ahead. But what this does is it shows you the standard, and then it shows you, so the teacher column here is what assignments you have released to the students. And then over here is the student completion rate, how far along they've gone. So if someone is maybe lagging on completing things, so you're going to see them drop a little bit there. And then you'll also get an average for the class. So that's just a good way to gauge your class participation. And if you're having people who maybe need a little bit more of a challenge or a little bit less of a challenge. I think we've covered just about everything with projects. I can't remember if we showed you guys the portfolio feature on one of our previous calls, so I'll let someone speak to that. But I think this is a good time to just open it up for questions. So any questions on that? Okay. Going once, going twice, sold to the empty room. Okay. Have we covered the portfolio? Have you guys seen that feature in action yet? Okay, let's take a look at that. So the great thing, well, my favorite thing about software is that I get to see results pretty quickly. I don't have to spend a lot of time before I can, especially with HTML and JavaScript. And so we want to give students the ability to showcase their work. So what we do here, so the portfolio, this is something where they can add relevant skills. They can add kind of a background of their professional, their student career. So for me, I put my GitHub profile because if you're an engineer, that's the first thing everyone asks on a job interview is what's your GitHub profile look like? So that's that. The Ruby gems that I've created. We've got a professionalism section, career goals, again, with some interests, and then courses and projects. So this is kind of cool because we actually give students the ability to showcase real work that they've done. So here we've got a project reflection, the name of it. And then if we actually look at this, this is a running website that we've got embedded here inside of an iframe. And so right now, again, because we're using zip files, what you would do in order to create this is you would create a new course project, and then you'd upload a zip file. Actually, let's take a look at it real quick. I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So we can choose a thumbnail. That's what you're going to see initially. Tooltip description. Here's a zip file. This is going to be the bulk of your project, and then here's going to be the root file. So this will be the path relative to the root of the zip file, where we're going to point that web start, if you will. And then once that's done, they're going to have a working website that they can then go ahead and show off to their friends and family, and ideally, future internship opportunities. Okay, so that's the portfolio. The other nice thing about this too is we've got this shareable URL, and by default, this will be portal.liveoakcs.com/portfolios, and then a unique identifier, some rather long string. But you can change that. So for me, I've changed it to JMac123. And once you copy this, you can share it, and you don't need to be logged into the system in order to view this. The only difference between what I'm seeing here as a student versus what someone would see in the shareable URL is they won't have all these pencil icons because they won't be able to edit anything in their portfolio. So this is just a nice complement to what we already offer. And eventually what we'll want to do is, in the same way that we're moving project-based assignments to a fully immersed UI experience within the site, we'll be moving to do that here too. So there'll be less zip uploading and more of choose a project and move it over. But it'll still be a great way to showcase what they've done. Okay, so that's really at this time. So any questions on that? And I'll wait a second, and if there's not, then I'll pass it back to Kimball. Okay, Kimball?
All right. Thanks so much, Jimmy. I really appreciate the portal feature tour. Going to pull our slides back up. Okay, so portal feature tour is wrapped up for this third PD session. We're almost at the end here. There was a quick anecdote that I really wanted to share with all of you as CS teachers. I think this could be a good example for some students down the road. I was speaking with a friend of mine last week. Her name is Nina, and she has worked for Chick-fil-A corporate for some time now. And Nina was telling me about how her job has changed over the last few months. And it's due to software. It's due to digital technology. Nina translates at Chick-fil-A corporate. She takes their English documents, their English training manuals, all of the labels in their kitchens, everything that makes a Chick-fil-A tick as far as English instruction. And she translates it into various versions of Spanish. And that's what Nina's done for a long time now for Chick-fil-A. As they continue to expand as a company, there are more and more locations in heavily Spanish-speaking areas, parts of the U.S., and I think they might even expand beyond the U.S. eventually. I know they have in some areas already, but into more Latin American countries. Chick-fil-A corporate decided to pull some fancy new software system in to start doing translation work. It's an artificial intelligence-based system that does Spanish translations. So often executives are drawn towards using these smart systems as a long-term cost savings effort. Sometimes they stick, sometimes they don't. In Nina's case, she's been made a contractor, so Chick-fil-A is essentially trying to eliminate her job by using this AI system. The funny thing is the AI system, it's not doing an incredible job. Eventually, one day it probably will, but right now it's just not doing it. It's not cutting it. So it's an interesting case study in how it might not be best just to have a human doing a job, but it might not be best to replace a human altogether with the job, because she's having to go in and help the AI system do the job it's supposed to be doing. The goal is for it to translate Spanish into El Salvadorian Spanish. There's differences in dialects, and she is a human who's very skilled in this profession. She knows how to make those little nuanced translations. The AI system, it doesn't know how to do that. It can do the basics, but it doesn't have the finesse. But when I heard that story the other day from my friend, I just thought that would be a good example to share with you all, to show off how important it is that we educate the next generation in digital literacy, so that we don't have a generation that's chomping at the bit to automate away everyone's jobs just because it could be possible, but maybe to look at a more balanced view. How can we take what's good about the AI system and merge that with what's amazing about the human who's currently doing the job to make the best of both worlds? So that's just a quick reflection here towards the end of our PD. Let's see here. There's one other slide I wanted to share with you all before we wrapped up with a final Q&A. These are some of the books that I was mentioning earlier. I don't really have a lot of time to sit down and read a book these days with infants and 2 baby boys. And, as a father of youngsters, that takes up a lot of time outside of work. But I can listen to audiobooks. And that's how I do a lot of my own professional development. A lot of my own continuing education is happening on Saturdays when I'm mowing, or in the evenings if I'm taking care of projects, taking out the garbage, washing dishes. But these are 5 books that I've been reading over the last year or two. I've completed all of them and read a few times. But as CS teachers, I think that some of these books would really be a benefit to some of you all. This is less about coding and more about where our economy is headed as it relates to software, artificial intelligence. And I believe that almost all 5 of these books touch on teaching as a profession. One of the recurring themes that I've listened to in all of these books is that 2 of the safest professions long-term are going to be healthcare and teaching. The big companies out there building systems, they could automate any industry they want to. Retail could be automated today. We don't technically need any retail workers in stores. But they haven't done it because we as consumers prefer to have a human that we can ask questions to. And with teaching and healthcare, with teaching, we've hit a point where we've got all this information online, but it'll never, ever substitute for a teacher guiding things in the classroom with the students. I know I'm preaching to the choir when it comes to that concept, but I really appreciate the view in these 5 books. I'll give it a small synopsis of each one. The Wealth of Humans is a look at how physical place is mattering less and less. The ability of knowledge workers and people who are able to be flexible with remote systems, much like you all have been with remote teaching, that's going to continue to matter more and more and more, rather than physical factories and the business as usual office commutes and the industries of the last 100 years. So Wealth of Humans has been a fascinating book, kind of projecting where we're headed over the next few decades. A World Without Work talks about artificial intelligence and how, yes, we're going to reinvent a whole lot of new jobs, but there's going to be a great many jobs that are simply not needed in the next few decades. So we could be looking, for the very first time in history, we could be looking at the scenario where a great many people are not able to contribute economically. And it doesn't mean we all get to sit back on our couch and watch more Netflix. It's actually going to be a very challenging thing for society to move through. How do you balance things out when many, many people's skills are no longer needed from an economic standpoint? And that's really where the third book comes in. You all probably remember hearing this name and seeing this face in the presidential run, Andrew Yang. He was running on a, I believe it's an independent ticket, but he was really pushing for a universal basic income. He's done a lot of research into how AI is going to continue to impact the next few decades. And the War on Normal People is really just talking about how well-intentioned companies in tech are going to continue to build tools that unfortunately hollow out America's middle class. And that's something we should all be concerned about. How do we maintain what America's been known for, creating a different standard of living for so many that historically the world's never seen before. The last two books, and I'll move quickly here. Future Proof: 9 Rules for Humans in the Age of Automation. This is a great book by a journalist from the New York Times. Y'all watched a video of his. If you like the video in the first session of PD, I think you'll like the book. He really speaks to how we need to embrace what makes us not robots. None of us are robots, and we shouldn't act like them. We need to be putting our best foot forward as humans with our empathy and emotional intelligence. We can't outperform a machine, but maybe we shouldn't be trying to. And the third book, Post-Corona, also has some really great material about teaching. And then it goes on to speak about the future of higher ed and how things are shifting technologically in the wake of the coronavirus. So I'll send these slides out. If these are books that look interesting to you, I hope you can glean something good from it. I've certainly enjoyed all 5, and I can highly recommend them. Looking ahead, we have only got one more scheduled PD session. As we said earlier, we're going to be available all summer long. If you have questions, send us a message in the chat or send us an email, and we will do our best to answer those questions. But we don't want you all to think that PD ends just because the final scheduled session is over. We're excited to support you all as you go through your projects this summer, just to get more familiar with the Live Oak system and the projects and curriculum within as we all prepare for fall working together. So that's the final session, same place, same time next week. And final slide, wrapping up. Are there any questions before we call it a day? None from Sarah, none from Dane and Jimmy, nothing, not seeing anything with Jen, Dr. Walter, and Maxine. Okay, looks like that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you all so much for making time today. We really appreciate the opportunity to get to have these PD discussions and walkthroughs with all of you. And we're looking forward to the 4th and final PD session next week. I hope you all have a fabulous last 3 days of the countdown. And then I hope everyone has an excellent start to this summer.
Thanks.
Bye,
All right,
everybody.
thank you.
Have a great evening.